to your heart. Look to the sky. Look to the sky. How can I make this place a better one for you and I? Protect our future. Protect our land. Protect our children. Give them a hand. Protect our oceans. Protect our sand. Protect our mountains. Why can't we all just understand? Kule, aloha. Kule, kuleana. Hele, na keiki o ka aina.
Aloha, I'm Alana K, and this is Sustainable Aloha. The ecosystem has built-in characteristics to ensure equilibrium. A familiar sight is the stripping away of sand on the beach in winter and its return in summer. When humans interfere with this process by erecting seawalls, the process is disrupted and results in unnatural erosion and irregular shifting of sand. The imbalances created by human-made controls cause compounding problems, and some of those are coming to the fore at this time. In sustainability, the toughest questions we have to ask are the ones where a decision needs to be made between human endeavors and the natural world that supports us. When I say we need to think like an island, that means we have a unique ecosystem that is mostly independent and self-sustaining, and at the same time self-limiting. Imbalances are more readily evident here as a result. We also have unique economic challenges. Today's show is about Maui's out-of-balance economy, creating a condition where the workforce cannot afford to live here anymore. This is evidenced in the fact that many businesses have had to shorten their hours or close their doors because they are not able to secure enough staffing. An important facet of sustainability is a sustainable economy. I know I am preaching to the choir when I say that Maui Island is at a breaking point and rent prices have skyrocketed greatly since the Lahaina disaster displaced thousands of residents. The federal government has stepped in and is paying triple the market rates to house these victims, which has caused the rental rates to spike even further out of control. Even with the state of Hawaii mandatory minimum wage being $14 an hour at this time, businesses have had to start offering wages much higher than minimum wage in order to gain and retain their staff. Even so, wages as high as $25 an hour are simply not enough to maintain even the meagerest standard of living on Maui. According to MIT, a sustainable wage for an individual living on Maui Island in 2024 would be approximately $29 an hour for a 40-hour work week. They determined that a single person needs to make approximately $60,000 a year, and a couple with one child needs to make approximately $118,000 per year. Let's take a quick look at some actual numbers and a sampling of businesses that provide essential services. The industry standard for most intents and purposes for housing is 30%. A Maui News article from July of 2023 states that 28.6% of Maui residents pay more than 50% of their gross income on housing. Because data naturally lags behind reality, the most current numbers, exacerbated by the recent displacement of thousands of residents, are not readily available. Even so, the most recent numbers that are available don't seem to reflect reality. For instance, according to the MIT study, the stated average rent for a couple with one child in 2020 for Maui is $2,200, but in reality, the rent for most apartment rental properties in Kihei have rents starting at $2,400 a month for a very small 2-bedroom apartment. A quick search on the internet reveals an even higher average rental price. Couple this issue with the compounding inflation rates, and it looks like the workforce is completely priced out of life on Maui. An economy needs the workforce to thrive. This is not a sustainable economy, and it is severely out of balance. The question is, do we allow the economy to experience its natural ebb and flow, or is it crashing because of human interference? My personal opinion is that tourism and government dollars comprise too much of the economy, and the current imbalance is largely a result of this. Talk to someone who is in the rental market and part of the workforce here, and they will tell you that the affordability numbers have been stretched to polarities we have not experienced before. Naturally, there are other causes and other perspectives. My guest today represents some trending perspectives and is working to provide a voice for Maui's workforce and renters. Alan Lloyd is an organizer with Maui Tenants Association, a project of the Hawaii Workers Center. He also works the phone on the tenant hotline, which was created by him. Alan, mahalo for joining me today.
It's good to see you again.
Yeah. We met the other day and talked about just countless subjects. You know, I mean, there's so many things that feed into this. So I'm going to start with talking to you about, let's touch on your background, and then we'll get into what you're doing today. So you have done some things organizing people in the past for certain causes. You want to mention a couple of those, or whatever your highlights are?
Sure. When I was younger, I helped organize the tenants who lived in the International Hotel in San Francisco. And these are mostly Filipino tenants. Mm-hmm. And eventually they got evicted. And I was one of the people there in front of the hotel, linking arm in arm, and they had the police back their horses. So we had the back of the horses coming towards us to try to get us out of the way. So.
Wow. So they did eventually get you. You weren't able to achieve your objectives in that one?
No.
No. But I'm glad you tried, though. I'm the same way. I've been trying. Never stop, never give up. So you do something in Seattle too, right?
Right, in Seattle, I was part of the organizing effort to increase the minimum wage to a more livable wage. And so we got passed, we circulated an initiative to get $15 an hour minimum wage. This is a long time ago. This is 5 or 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. Minimum wage on the ballot, and that pressure that was put on the city council got them to pass a minimum wage ordinance.
Fabulous.
So now the minimum wage in Seattle is almost $20 an hour.
Yeah, so they went up incrementally.
They went up incrementally.
So you've had the experience, and I've had the same thing too. I've done some things in the past, like class action suits and certain things, and I've been in court with landlords on Maui. I used to be a homeowner in Wisconsin, and I came here and I was in the rental market. So I know you have your wins and you succeed sometimes, but and then you have your losses, but it's not really a loss because you learn from it, and then you kind of regroup and you know how to move forward in the future. You learn from things.
Right.
Plus, I think it's always good to make an effort. So I know that when I got together with you that I wanted to impress on you, because I have been involved in things in Maui, how challenging it is to affect change here. I know in some areas all you need to do is protest or rally or show a good cause, and some politician might jump in and help you move that cause forward. On Maui, I found that a lot more difficult to do, and I also found that I have seen people either rally behind a good cause or maybe sometimes, in my opinion, not such a good cause, but I didn't feel that they were very organized. So this show is hopefully getting us to the point where people can, because people are speaking up, and we're going to get to that in a moment, have some information. You really need to know what your government departments are doing, who's responsible for what you're looking for. Like I said, you're probably not going to have a politician jump in. You know, there might be some, and we might bring that up, but for the most part, you really need to have your ducks in a row. So we're going to talk about some of those things. And I think one thing that you really bring to the table is that you have this tenants, Well, let me get back to your Facebook page. I found you because of your Facebook page.
Right.
I tried to start a tenants union many years ago to address a lot of the issues you're addressing, mainly the slumlord issues where they keep raising the rent but they don't fix the property.
Right.
Somehow our organizations got connected a little while ago, so I was on your phone list to notify me when you're doing Zoom calls. So that's how I got back in touch with you. But you have a Facebook page, Maui Tenants Association, which
Right.
is very similar to what mine was. It was Maui Tenants Union. And you have how many followers now? 500 something?
Probably 570. Yeah.
Somewhere around there, yeah. I just looked at it yesterday, which is good because when I tried to organize tenants to have a voice and get some things taken care of, I didn't succeed in getting that kind of a number. So that's really good. So we got a good start, and I plan to be here with you and help support you through this whole process. So you're on the hotline, and you say that you've made a lot of your contacts because of people who have called into the hotline. And this is
Right.
your hotline.
This is the Maui Tenants Association hotline, which is supported by the Hawaii Worker Center.
Hawaii Workers Center. It's
Yeah.
supported by that. Okay. So you consider yourself, the other thing I derived from our conversation is I call myself an activist. I think it's just kind of an umbrella. I see it as like an umbrella term, but you call yourself an organizer, and I
Right.
understand why you're saying that. You feel that somebody kind of needs to lead the charge to help the people who want to do activism or would do activism to organize.
Right.
Is that a correct description of
That's
what you're
correct.
attempting to do at this time?
That's correct. It's all about getting people together who have been affected by their landlords and want to step up and do something about it together, working together.
Instead of having to use the legal system. That's a lot of things we talked about.
Instead of using the legal system, or instead of doing it themselves.
Doing it yourself, hiring a lawyer, which most people can't do.
Right,
Or
they
like
can't
what I've
afford
done,
to
I
do that.
navigate it myself.
Right.
But that's because I do that kind of stuff.
Well,
but I
most
realize
people are
most
afraid to
people
go to
can't.
court, too.
Yeah. I can understand that. So I know that you have a few objectives, but the one thing I wanted to address first is we had a Zoom call. You had a Zoom call last week where we had a lot of participants. I think this is the most critical issue at this time, probably the most pressing.
Right.
That tenants are being evicted for a number of reasons that are essentially workarounds for the current moratorium.
Right.
So you want to tell me a little bit about that? What's happening with that?
Sure. So the last moratorium, which expires March 5th, was the ninth, the Governor Green's ninth moratorium, and it basically said there should be no evictions except for 4 different reasons. So the first reason is that if the landlord wants to sell the house, then they're allowed to, the new owner is allowed to evict the tenant. So that's the first one. The second one is if the landlord wants to renovate, they can evict the tenant, but they have to offer the unit back to the tenant.
Oh.
But it can be at a new rental price.
Yeah.
So it can be an increased rental price. The third is that if a landlord wants to move themselves or a family member into the unit, then they're allowed to evict the tenant. And then the fourth is if a lease expires, they have a 6-month lease or a 1-year lease. If that expires, then after it expires, the landlord can evict the tenant.
Is there a?
And those are the loopholes.
Did you?
Oh,
so
sorry,
we got
there's another one too.
Okay, go ahead.
And the fifth one is that now, because FEMA is paying, as you talked about, 3 times the amount
Of the
for renting,
market value.
of the market value for renting, landlords are evicting tenants to get that FEMA dollars.
And so I believe what we talked about was establishing a way in which these landlords have to register, and then we're going to get to a broader picture of registering properties and a regulated industry. But we're talking about in this time of disaster where it's affecting everybody who lives here, and that's the other thing, is this is affecting all the renters on Maui, not just the ones that were in the burn zone that were displaced as a direct result of the fire. It's obviously clearly affecting everybody else.
Right.
And because it's putting pressure on the housing supply, which was already experiencing issues, but now the fact that the government has come in and they're offering these large numbers, it'll artificially raise the price. And we can see that in evidence. We know, we're out in the community, and I don't have time to include all the evidence or all the studies, but anybody who's out in the community knows, you know, oh, in my complex, they've raised the rent. I know one place where a couple friends of mine live, Paradise Gardens in Kihei, they went from like $2,100 a month, which was already high. That's the thing. It was already high for that square footage and that condition of property. Those were only $1,300 a few years ago. They were already high.
Shameful.
And then as a result, I heard, and this is just hearsay, that they've gone up to $2,800. So I can see how, well, where are they getting that market value from? Because the recent market value is high, and now over the last 6 months, that market value has increased some more. So what are they basing their numbers on? And I heard they had a workaround, but it seems like they're kind of trying to deal with that. Like, yeah, where a lease is up and now they can put you on month to month. Have you found out in your travels, is there a limit to how much, if that's a current tenant, whether they are up against signing a new lease or if they're placed on month to month after the lease expires, is there a limit to the percentage of rate increase or no?
So landlords are not allowed to increase rents even if a person has a lease until the moratorium is expired.
Okay, so with the moratorium, yeah, they're not supposed to. But how about if they're on month to month?
If they're on month to month, and then they're not allowed.
Does the moratorium?
The moratorium
does apply?
Does apply.
So if you're already living in a place, regardless of the legal arrangement at the time, if you're already living there, if you're already a tenant for one reason or another, they're not allowed, because of the moratorium, they aren't allowed. So even if they put you on month to month, but see, that way, if they put you on month to month, then they can serve you with 45-day notice for whatever reason they come up with. And then you were talking about just cause eviction, which you've heard of
Right.
in other places than I said, that it's already part of the State of Hawaii Landlord-Tenant Code, that there's certain, you know, I suppose we could flesh those out, but anyway.
I want to give an example.
So go ahead.
There's Charlotte. Charlotte's one of the tenants who called the hotline.
Okay.
And she's been to one of our meetings. And Charlotte, her landlord tried to increase her rent, and she basically sent him a letter. It said, no, you can't increase my rent during the moratorium.
Yeah.
So then he said, oh, well, okay, then I'm going to evict you because I want to move in a family member.
Yeah.
And Charlotte didn't believe that he wanted to move in a family member because she basically told him he couldn't increase rent. So that's what happens. And now Charlotte lives in a garage.
Yeah.
A friend's garage.
Right, which is pretty much all you're left with now. I really, you know, this is the reality of it, folks. This is really where we're at. You're either, I know somebody who's paying $500 a month to sleep on somebody's couch. And they're getting about close to $2,000 just to rent a room. Another friend of mine said she's been paying $1,700, and the woman has asked her for $1,900, and that's just renting a room. So that's what it's gotten to, and so it's really critical for anybody who's listening who's not aware of these numbers. But when it comes to the just cause eviction, I realize that a lot of things that we're talking about probably need to be ironed out, and this community, I think Maui as a community, this is the reason we're talking about this, needs to get some dialogue going and needs to be interfacing with our legislature and administration to get this problem worked out. When it comes to building more housing, that would be a whole different show, because I know a lot of things about that, and it's not what you'd think. Maui County is not in the business of providing housing or building or investing in housing. But that's a whole nother subject. And the Departments of Housing and Human Concerns actually are not directly, none of this is in direct control of any of that aspect. So this is really a matter that the residents of Maui need to come together on and make some decisions the people who do own their home have been here a long time, or wealthy people who can afford 5 homes, they need to understand that the workforce is a necessary part. If you recall the graphic that I showed earlier, you got your nail techs, you got the ones that change the oil in your car, the restaurant staff, you have the staff at Costco. All of these people that you rely on, even the wealthy people, don't live in a bubble, you know, and the landscapers. So they're hiring out just about everything that other people do for themselves. So you think about it, the people on the higher ends need to be concerned about the health of the workforce. You know, this is not just a problem that relates to the workforce itself. So we're laying out this stuff so that everybody can understand. And the show is about everybody listening to and working together and in the aloha spirit. That's why it's sustainable aloha. It's about sustainability, but it's doing it in a kind and loving way that's in keeping with our culture's byline, aloha. So you're talking about the just cause eviction. I know that was one of your goals, and I said, well, even though what I'm talking about, that it's already in the landlord-tenant code, that they're similar but maybe a little bit different, but it's one of the things we definitely need to look at, because I have had that too. Now that kind of borders on retaliatory eviction. So we got people getting moved out because their landlords are greedy, let's just state it as it is, and they want the big money. I just heard a guy on the beach saying, I'm looking for a condo for me and my family because he owns one in the house behind Safeway in that subdivision, and he said FEMA will give me $11,000 a month to rent my house. So I mean, yeah, that gives them all kinds of leeway to invest in something else and live somewhere else. So anyway, so you got the you have the greedy people wanting to get the money from FEMA, even though it's not forever. And then you have, what's the other thing? The evictions, retaliatory evictions.
Right.
And that's another thing that we're looking at here too, is if people complain when these rents are going up, and then it's like, wow, this place isn't even worth that much. I mean, like, once again, Paradise Gardens, I think they're a really good example. They have black mold and all kinds of stuff, and you complain. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I talked to someone today who his landlord basically said, I'm going to evict you so I can get a FEMA tenant in there.
So he was honest. Okay.
And the landlord was honest. And so he complained to the Attorney General's office, which is what you can do. You can send an email to State Attorney General's office. And but what he told me, and what a lot of people are concerned about, is the fear if they complain of retaliation. So you talked about retaliation. That's one of the things why people don't complain, even though there's a law that says the landlord can be penalized. They are
treble damages.
They are afraid of retaliation.
Yeah.
So a lot of people aren't going to complain because of that. So we need to remedy the fact that retaliation is the issue.
It's a big issue. People don't realize.
And make it so that there's a responsibility of the landlord. Accountability, yeah.
Because that's already
accountability of the landlord, that if someone complains, that within 7 days the Attorney General needs to get back to the landlord.
Right.
And that if the tenant then reports that the landlord's retaliating, then there needs to be a high penalty on that landlord.
And in the meantime, this guy's working 65 hours a week.
Right.
Can barely make anything but microwave food.
Right.
And he's got to try to figure out how to communicate with the Attorney General's office.
Right.
And this is what we talked about too, is a lot of the things we bring up, well, it's already illegal for people to do a lot of things that they're doing.
Right.
The problem is enforcement and accountability.
Right.
And when I was researching things and got into an issue with a landlord, slumlord again, who was harassing and doing all this random, dropping in and expecting money and things like that, expecting money that wasn't due them.
Right.
What it gets down to is that rentals are not a regulated industry.
Right.
So the problem with that is there is no agency, and I even double checked to make sure I was correct on that. There is no agency that enforces or holds accountable, such as the health department. If you have sewage spilling into your living room, you can go to the health department. now that's a whole nother subject too, whether or not you get the inspector to come and whether or not they're going to really inspect it. That's a whole nother subject. But you have somebody you can call or a place you can go. But as a tenant, you have no recourse but to be in court with this landlord, which, like I said, I've done a couple times.
Right.
And I have experience as a property manager and also as a scorned tenant, you know, so I know what to do. And I have to say I succeeded, I think, pretty much every time. But then what happened was it resulted in me having to move out.
Right.
Because if you're going to take on a battle with a landlord over something,
Right.
they have the power.
Right.
And I think that's what we're looking for with what we're trying to present in this show is the problems have gotten way out of hand.
Right.
And it's time that we find a way by putting our heads together, and that includes our government, to create ways for the remedies, you know, the ways for tenants to handle, because they're really, the landlords are really in the power seat. Now, I know there's landlords who have had abusive tenants, and I went through that already when I managed apartments, and I was 23 years old. I was pregnant, and I had to evict some people for not paying their rent. We gave them a lot more leeway back in those days, and they had dogs. They weren't supposed to have pets. They had 6 people living in the place. They weren't paying the rent. And when I gave them their 5-day notice, they put kitty litter and eggs on my antique car. I had a 1967 Mustang. And then I had another one threaten to kill me and my baby. I mean, so please, landlords, know that I know what it's like to be a manager, and I know you have these problems, but the major problem is these honest, hardworking people who are just trying to make a living,
Right.
feed their family, raise their kids, are just being shut out of the economy, and it's not beneficial to anybody. This is not going to benefit anybody.
So I get calls all the time from people who have been renting for 4 years, 8 years, 11 years.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And then they get the eviction notice, and then they say, well, I've been a good tenant for all this, for all this time, and then why am I getting evicted? And so,
yeah.
I mean,
So
it's a shame.
Do you want to share a little bit of? Do you have some things you want to share about some of the calls? Like how do people find your tenant hotline? Is it on the? Is it with the Hawaii Workers Center, or is it on the Maui Tenants Association?
So they find it through Facebook postings, or they find it through word of mouth. That's how most people find it. But recently I've got, since December, 75% of my calls that I get are for evictions. And then previous to December, from January 1st to December 23rd, 45% were evictions. But the shameful thing is that families with kids are being evicted, which disrupts the life of the kids, disrupts the life of the family.
Yeah, there's not an extra minute. I know with raising kids, because I did that already. There's not you can't miss a minute. You're either taking somebody to the baseball game, or you're picking somebody up from school, or you're helping somebody with homework, or you're shopping, you're feeding, you're cleaning. There's no time to mess around with this stuff.
Right.
And it's really sad. So you're saying that it's mostly evictions. Do you think it's evictions as a result of the rent increases? Do you think that's what they're calling about, or?
I think it's...
or a variety of things.
There's no proof, but most, I think, the calls are what the tenant thinks is that because the landlord can get an increased amount of rent. And I mean, FEMA just came out with a press release that says that no landlord will be given a FEMA contract if they evict a tenant. But the thing is, there's no, no one can prove that they're evicting a tenant. Because once you give the eviction notice, and the tenant may or not, report it to the Attorney General, then, and the landlord may not say to FEMA that they've evicted. So
there's no way to really track all of that.
There's
Once
no way
again,
to track it and enforce it.
At this point in time, it's requiring a person to use the court system, which nobody has the time or money for.
Right.
And so chances are they're not going to do it. So what I would like to help you advocate for is getting, because I've tried to do this before, adding a couple things on the landlord tenant code, or no. never mind. Erase that. So it's mainly.
Erase that.
Mainly, can we do that? Edit this out. No. There's no, because it's not a regulated industry, there's no agency or oversight where enforcement agency, there's no enforcement. So you can't call up like you do with the Attorney General, which is, honestly, it's too far distance, it's state level. We need something local, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Maui County being what it is, a very unique island, very unique economy, some of the highest prices in the nation, if not the highest prices in the nation. We had the highest unemployment in 2020 in the nation. We were really collecting some awards.
We got the stats.
I know, like the biggest disaster in the last 100 years. We got the numbers to prove we're just awesome. But yeah, I thought it was funny how I listened to one committee meeting where the FEMA director at the end finally said, when they were talking about all this stuff, and he says, why don't people just leave? Most of the time when we take care of a disaster, the people leave. And I'm like, no. We're a really unique bunch of people. Yeah. I always say if you stand here long enough, and always somebody will hand you a banana. You go to a yoga class. People have baskets of avocados, bananas, whatever's growing in their yard. They share with each other. It's a completely different culture. And people say, how can you spend, 10? I put a picture on Facebook of a $10 squeeze bottle of ketchup, and I said I do this every once in a while to scare people from moving here. But honestly, if you're like me, you know how to shop. And the other thing is that's not our priority. We're like, oh, God, we put up with the prices because, to me, going to the beach every morning, this beautiful beach at Keavakapu, seeing starry skies, fresh air, friendly people, to me, that's priceless. And I think a lot of people who live here feel that way. And so other people might not understand our situation. This problem has to get solved. And I know some people won't be able to write it out. I have my way of writing it out, and everybody has their own unique ways. That's another thing that's cool about Maui people. We're able to piece it together in the last minute.
It's called being resilient. We are resilient.
We are a resilient bunch. We definitely are. So I guess
and we shouldn't have to be forced to leave. That's
right.
the thing. It's
And
our
I don't think
community,
now
right?
it's gotten to that point, and I think now people are finding, like I said, I wasn't able to successfully organize people, but now I think that's happening because it's gotten to be the 11th hour, right?
Right.
So I just want to, we didn't put so does the Hawaii Workers Center have a website?
We do.
You do have is it hawaiiworkerscenter.com or .org?
.org, yes.
.org. So we didn't put that in our software prior to the show, so we'll just say that again. It's on his shirt, hawaiiworkerscenter.org. And
as you can tell, it's the little fish going after the big fish.
Yeah. And then my website is sustainablealoha.org, and this show will be posted on there as a YouTube video, and you can also watch it on Akaku. And I just want to make sure we covered everything. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about besides what we covered?
Well, we're also having a press conference.
Oh, yeah, that's right, the press conference.
Next Thursday, that's February 22nd at 12 noon at the county building lawn. The lawn in front of the county building.
Let me restate that so you heard it properly, and also in case somebody is watching this a year from now,
right.
that the press conference is Thursday, February 22nd. Thursday, February 22nd, 2024 at noon on the lawn of the county building, which is on High Street, 200 High Street. And your goal with that, I asked you, but do you want to state what your goal is with that press conference?
So our goal is to expose the myth that evictions aren't occurring right now. A lot of people believe that evictions aren't occurring, and so
yeah, there's a moratorium.
We'll have tenant speakers who will talk about the fact that they're going to talk about their experience, and they'll talk about the fact that evictions are occurring, and that the governor needs to tighten the moratorium and tighten it so that the loopholes aren't allowed. It's an emergency. We need to be clear that during an emergency, people should not have to deal with evictions.
Okay, and you also you felt that that would help you get some exposure to hopefully gather more people
Right.
into the organization, which is, I think that's a really important goal, because I know, being a single person, like trying to get the thing through that I went to a council member and I got totally shut down. You know, it's like, oh, that's not true.
Right.
It's like, you know, so you got more people, it gives you more power. That's just the way the world is. And so good, then that'll get into different news outlets, which at this time, we don't have much newspaper news outlets, but we have a lot of the Facebook ones, Maui Now, Maui Watch and stuff. So I hope that that's going to be
And
part
Hawaii
of.
News Now.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah, I like them. Yeah. So the other thing was that I think we both agreed we need to have an agency or an enforcement mechanism. And so, yeah, the press conference, and go to the Facebook page, Maui Tenants Association. There is a couple of them. If you can find the one that has 500 some, what do you call them, members? That's the one.
Followers.
Followers. That's yours. I know that there's another one that doesn't have very many followers at all. So, and mine is Maui Tenants Union, that's still there. So remember, association. It's the Maui Tenants Association, because that's the one that's active right now. I'm busy with other things, but I will help you with whatever you're doing. And I thought there was one last thing. Anything else that we want to talk about? We talked about, I don't know. Okay, I like to do things off the cuff, so sorry about that. I hope everybody can bear with me. It allows for free, things to come up. Okay, so the purpose of today's show is to mark this juncture in Maui's history and present some of the issues of the day. I'm not suggesting that anybody has all the answers, and I certainly do not. There are so many different topics that feed into this issue, and I will likely cover some of them in future episodes. If you have an idea or opinion on today's topic, or would like to be on a future episode of Sustainable Aloha, please visit our website at sustainablealoha.org. And thank you so much for being with me today, Alan.
Thank you,
Aloha.
Alana.
Aloha.
Kalani malu e hoe e olu mai ana o ki a kua I kona mau ka huo mako mako noi o mako noi o mako noi kulei honu